The cafe buzzed with the usual morning energy, coffee machines humming, plates clinking, soft chatter filling the air. Lily sat near the window, absent-mindedly stirring her iced latte with her straw, lost in thought. Outside, the city moved in its relentless rhythm, cars honking, pedestrians rushing, life moving at full speed. But in here, she felt a rare moment of calm, a pocket of stillness in an otherwise chaotic world. She had no idea that in less than a minute her life would change forever. It happened in an instant. A man, tall and scruffy, wearing a wrinkled hoodie and jeans, came rushing past her table, holding a full glass of orange juice. Whether he was in a hurry or simply careless, no one could say. But his foot caught on the leg of a chair, and time seemed to slow as the glass slipped from his hand. Lily barely had time to register the movement before the cold liquid splashed down on her head. The cafe fell silent. The chill of the juice shocked her system, sending a shiver down her spine as the sticky liquid seeped into her hair, dripped down her forehead and soaked into her light blue blouse. A gasp escaped from someone nearby. Lily blinked, frozen in disbelief. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was furious. The man now standing in front of her looked horrified. "Oh my God," he breathed, his hands hovering as if unsure whether to help or back away. "I didn't mean to." Lily shot up from her chair, her heart pounding. The cafe's customers stared, some whispering, others watching with wide eyes, waiting for her reaction. Heat rushed to her cheeks, not just from anger but from something deeper, something strange. Her skin tingled, and a peculiar sensation ran down her spine, like a tiny electric current buzzing just beneath the surface. She clenched her fists, feeling the dampness of her clothes sticking to her skin. "Are you serious?" she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. I'll get some napkins!" The man stammered and darted toward the counter, knocking over a chair in his panic. But Lily barely noticed him anymore. Something was wrong. Her breathing felt different, shallow, uneven. Her fingers twitched as if an unseen force ran through them. The cafe's lights flickered overhead. Then, for the briefest moment, everything around her seemed to pulse, like the world itself took a deep breath. The sound of the cafe dulled. The air felt heavier. Something in her was awakening. The man returned with a handful of napkins, thrusting them toward her. "Here," he started, but his words were drowned out by the sudden, deafening crackle of electricity. A nearby table shook. Someone screamed. The cafe's hanging light bulbs flickered erratically before bursting with a sharp pop, sending tiny shards of glass raining down. The customers ducked, covering their heads. The man stumbled back, his face pale. Lily gasped, her breath coming in short, rapid bursts. She looked down at her hands, expecting to see something, anything, that could explain what just happened. But they looked the same. Normal. Except they weren't. Because deep inside something had changed. Something had awakened. And it all started with a simple glass of juice. Lily's breath came in shallow gasps as she stared at her hands, her fingers still trembling. The air around her crackled with an unfamiliar energy, invisible but undeniably present. She could feel it coursing through her veins like a current, warm and alive, as if something deep within her had been unlocked. The cafe was in chaos, people whispering, some scrambling to pick up their fallen cups and chairs, others simply staring at her in shock. But none of it felt real. The man who had spilled the juice took another step back, his face twisted in fear. What was that?" he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily had no answer. She didn't know what had just happened, but she could still feel it. The energy pulsing beneath her skin, waiting, wanting to be released again. She pressed her hands against her chest as if trying to hold it in, but the sensation only intensified. It was like standing at the edge of a storm, feeling the pressure build before the sky split open. A sharp ringing filled her ears, and for a moment the world around her blurred. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself, her heart pounding against her ribs. The air smelled different now, charged, metallic, like the aftermath of a lightning strike. And then, through the haze of confusion, she caught her own reflection in the cafe's glass door. She barely recognized herself. Her eyes, once a soft brown, now glowed with a faint golden hue, shifting like liquid gold under the dim cafe lights. Her skin shimmered for just a second before returning to normal, as if whatever had surged through her had briefly altered something at the core of her being. No, this wasn't normal. None of this was. A chair scraped against the floor, snapping her out of her trance. The cafe manager had stepped forward, eyeing her with a mix of caution and curiosity. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked, his voice measured. Lily swallowed hard, forcing a nod. "I think so," but she didn't believe it, because something inside her had changed, something she couldn't explain. And deep down she knew this was just the beginning. The energy inside Lily refused to settle. It pulsed beneath her skin like a living thing, coiling and uncoiling, waiting to be set free. Every breath she took felt heavier, charged with something beyond her understanding. She wanted to believe that what had just happened was some bizarre fluke, a trick of the mind, but the lingering static in the air told her otherwise. The cafe, though still filled with murmurs of confusion, seemed frozen in time. Customers exchanged nervous glances, some cautiously backing away from her table. The man who had spilled the juice remained rooted in place, his fingers twitching as if unsure whether to run or speak. He finally took a shaky step forward, his voice barely above a whisper. That wasn't normal. Lily shot him a sharp glare. "You think?" She was trying to keep herself together to mask the unease growing inside her, but even her own voice betrayed her. It wasn't just frustration, it was fear. Not of him, not of the cafe full of strangers staring at her, but of herself. And then it happened again. The small pendant around her neck, one she had worn since childhood, suddenly grew warm, pulsing against her skin. A sharp jolt ran down her spine, and before she could react, a golden arc of energy flickered across her fingertips. The lights above her buzzed violently before exploding, showering the cafe in tiny sparks. A woman screamed, a table rattled and flipped onto its side as if pushed by an unseen force. Lily gasped, yanking her hands back as if she had touched fire. But it wasn't her hands, it was her. The man's eyes widened in pure terror. "Oh, hell no." He stumbled backward, nearly knocking over another customer. The cafe manager reached for his phone, likely to call the authorities. Everyone else had either frozen in place or started inching toward the exit. Lily's chest rose and fell in panicked breaths. She could feel the energy building again, growing stronger by the second. If she didn't control it, something worse could happen. She shut her eyes, trying to will it away, to push it down. But the more she fought it, the stronger it became. Then, from somewhere in the back of the cafe, a voice cut through the chaos. Calm, knowing. "You need to leave. Now." Lily turned to see a woman she had never seen before. Tall, poised, and entirely unshaken. Unlike everyone else, she wasn't afraid. She was waiting. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as she turned toward the voice. The woman who had spoken stood near the back of the cafe, watching her with an unreadable expression. She wasn't panicked like the others, nor did she look surprised. It was as if she had expected this, expected Lily. The energy inside her still pulsed violently, making her skin feel too tight, her fingertips tingling as if they were just waiting for another surge. She didn't know what was happening to her, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't stay here. Not when she had no control over whatever was stirring inside her. The cafe was in complete disarray. People were either glued to their spots, too afraid to move, or edging toward the exit, wanting to be as far from her as possible. The cafe manager was speaking urgently into his phone now, and she didn't need to guess what he was saying. Police? Paramedics? She didn't know, but she wasn't about to stick around and find out. Lily took an unsteady step back, her pulse racing. I need to go, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. The man who had spilled the juice on her, the one who had started all of this, swallowed hard. Yeah, you really do, he said, still looking at her like she was a ticking bomb. But the second she moved, she felt the energy shift again, wild, uncontrollable. The pendant around her neck burned hotter, and before she could stop it, a sharp crack of golden light burst from her fingertips, striking the counter. The cash register sparked violently, and the espresso machine let out a loud pop before shutting down entirely. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. Panic spread through the cafe like wildfire. The last of the customers bolted for the door, shouting in fear. The manager dropped his phone in shock. The man who had caused all of this turned and ran, disappearing into the street outside. Lily stared at her hands in horror. She hadn't meant to do that. She hadn't even tried. The realization chilled her to the bone. This power wasn't just awakening. It was taking over. A firm hand suddenly gripped her wrist. "Come with me," the woman from the back said. Her voice was steady, unwavering, as if she had done this before. Lily looked up, her eyes locking onto the woman's. There was something about her, something that made Lily hesitate. This stranger wasn't afraid of her, wasn't running like everyone else. Instead, she looked prepared. Lily didn't have time to think. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The police were coming. She nodded, barely whispering, "Okay." The woman didn't waste another second. She tightened her grip and pulled Lily toward the back exit, slipping them both out into the alleyway. Lily took one last glance at the cafe, at the chaos she had left behind, the destruction she hadn't meant to cause. Then she turned away and ran.